Okay, good afternoon, everyone. I have the sweet new book, Mathematics for Business and Personal Finance, some light reading for the summer. And there's a problem in the book that took me back to my days when I worked for a bank that rhymes with bells and cargo. We had a lot of incentive programs for selling or opening checking and savings accounts and selling loans like personal loans, home equity loans, car loans, even. Anyway, those points, what was the equivalent to a point that we would earn for the products that we quote sold, would then translate into our bonus or commission. In Gabriella's case, she also earns points because she just got a job at her Uncle Joe's dealership, Crazy Mavericks Chrysler and Hyundai car lots. And her bonus is based on how many points she earns from selling new and used cars. It's 10 points for every new car and 5 points for every used car. Her cousin Rodrigo works at the law, and he told her that he actually earned 125 points last month. And he's like, shoot, I don't think you can do that, girl. And he won't tell her like how many cars altogether he sold or even how many used versus new cars, but she does know the total number of cars because she overheard him talking to his girlfriend on the phone. A little espionage, and you shouldn't listen into people's conversations, but she can't take back that information. She knows, and she also knows she has enough puzzle pieces now to figure this out. So let's help her come up with a strategy for how she can beat Rodrigo on the sales floor. And so one thing she could do is put together a spreadsheet and then slide in every conceivable combination within that trajectory from zero used cars and 16 new cars all the way down to zero new cars and 16 used cars. And then we know that it's 10 points for every new car and 5 points for every used car. So we use the formulas built into Excel and using the sum key to take the product of 16 cars in the point allocation, which is 10, and then add that to the note tally for used cars in that first scenario, multiplied by the tally for used cars, which is just shift 8, which is the asterisk or star key, and that's multiplication in Excel. And that gives us 160 points. And that makes sense just because 16 times 10 is 160, and then adding that to the product in 0 and 5, which is 0, is 160 plus 0. And then we can drag that formula all the way down. So at the bottom, we have 80 points, which makes sense because 0 times 10 is 0, but 16 times 5 is 80, which also makes sense because 5 times 10 is 50, and 5 times 6 is 30, and 50 plus 30 is 80, so that makes sense. 16 times 5 is 80. And then we just have to eyeball where the 125 point allocation would lie. Is there more than one combination to do that? No. It's just at 9 new cars and 7 used cars. And let's highlight that actually. Okay, and then we could, and an Excel spreadsheet might be useful if we look at all the combinations because she wants to beat him, and it is conceivable that the total number of cars is 16, maybe a rough average of what you can do. And within that limitation, to beat him, she might want to go for 10 new cars and 6 used cars. And again, I'm just assuming that there's a total amount of time on average you have to spend with each customer in order to sell those cars. Or, there's a time limitation generally in almost any kind of sales like that. But it is conceivable she could come up with a strategy for selling even more cars, but she's new to the business. So that might not be realistic right off the bat if she wants to beat him first thing and show him who's the boss. So I would suggest doing somewhere between 12 and 10 new cars would be the best way for her to do that. 13, I don't know if we would coach her to do that, but between 12 and 10 seems like a good sales target. However, as clever as the spreadsheet is, it is a little monotonous, and maybe just to do a quick calculation, algebra might be also very useful. And you can quickly do that without the spreadsheet just by taking a few facts to come up with two equations. First, 16 cars is equal to, in Rodrigo's case, new cars, N, plus used cars, U, and then 125 points is equal to 10 times N plus 5 times U. And then we can plug in this new equation over here by taking a U away from 16. You can say that N equals 16 minus U, and then plug that in to the second equation. So we have go back to my OneNote, 125 equals, let's see, 10, N equals 16 minus U, so that's 10 times 16 minus U plus 5U, and then 10 times 16 is 160, and then 10 times negative U is negative 10U plus 5U equals 125 points, and then just combine like terms to start with. So negative 10U plus 5U is just negative 5U. So 125 points equals 160 minus 5U. And then we're going to subtract 160 on both sides. So minus 10, or 160 minus 160. And so 125 to 160, well, 125 plus 25 would be 150, and then plus another 10 would be 60. So 25 plus 10 is 35. So negative 35 points, which sounds kind of silly, though you don't want negative points. Negative 35 points equals negative 5U. And then we just divide both sides by negative 5. Negative 5. And 35 divided by negative 5 equals 7. Negative divided by a negative is a positive. And these 5s wipe out. So you have 7 equals U. And then feeding that back into the original equation of new cars equals 16 minus U, and used cars 7, that tells us that N equals 16 minus 7. 16 minus 7 is equal to 9, which is exactly what we found on the Excel spreadsheet. And we could have done this the other way around, by the way. Didn't matter what we substituted in there. With the negative number, it's not as easy as if we had simply or simply done the other way. Instead of solving for n, we could have solved for u. Well, it's solved for n by finding what u is equal to. So if we subtract n on both sides, that would also be, go back to black, also be u equals 16 minus u minus n, 16 minus n, in which case then we'd still have 10, just 10n by itself, plus 5 times, because u equals 16 minus n equals 125 points, and 16 times 5 is 80, so 10n plus 80, and 5 times negative n is minus 5n equals 125. And then combine like terms again, so then we'd have 80 plus 5n equals 125. And then, let's see, subtract 80 on both sides, so 125 is 100 plus 25, and 100 minus 80 is 20, so 25 plus 20 is 25, plus 10 plus 10, so 25 plus 10 is 30, 35, 45. So 5n equals 45, and then divide both sides by 5, and n equals 9. And then, like I say, we already know that we were substituting in the equation of u, used cars, equals 16 minus n. So we can easily say, hey, that actually means 16 minus 9. 16 minus 9 is 7. And then 7 plus 9 equals 16. So, boom, she could easily figure it out that way as well. You might say, well, the Excel spreadsheet was actually easier. But I think it's helpful to know how to do this without the spreadsheet as well. And that would be an example of how to use substitution through algebra.